Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. All right, let's just jump right in, because today we are unpacking an absolutely wild historical case study. We're going to uncover what is honestly the ultimate secret weapon of humanity. And spoiler alert, it isn't a laser, it isn't some massive dreadnought, and it definitely isn't a super advanced AI. It's actually something much simpler, yet infinitely more dangerous. It's our own sheer unpredictability.
You know, for the longest time, the broader galaxy kind of looked down their noses at us humans. I mean, they straight up called us primitive. They called us violent. They genuinely thought we were entirely too emotional, way too reckless, and just way too unpredictable to ever actually survive, let alone thrive, out there among the stars. But, as we're about to see, the exact traits they wrote off as fatal flaws turned out to be the literal reason we survived the infamous events at Kepler Station.
So let's set the scene. Section 1. The setup. The mundane meets the undefeated.
Picture this. Before all the chaos broke out, Kepler Station was literally the most unremarkable engineering outpost you could imagine, just sitting out there on the edge of the Orion Arm. We're talking about exactly 312 peaceful human scientists and engineers, just trading data, all overseen by one very, very tired commander named Elena Vasquez. But they were about to have a head-on collision with the Varath Empire. And if you don't know the Varath, they were a terrifying warrior race of 7-foot-tall conquerors who had systematically crushed 42 different civilizations, and they had never, ever lost a battle.
For 3 long years, the humans on Kepler Station basically just waved at passing alien freighters. And then, it was a Tuesday. Because honestly, don't the worst things always happen on a Tuesday? The Vorath showed up. They were commanded by this heavily scarred veteran named Kyle. And Kyle? He didn't ask for a diplomatic meeting. No, he opened a comms channel and immediately dropped a strict 1-hour ultimatum. Surrender the station, surrender the tech, and hand over all resources to the Vorath Empire or be utterly destroyed. He made it crystal clear. Resist, and they would absolutely not be kind.
Which brings us to Section 2, the impossible odds, a coffee machine and a prayer.
Let's put this into perspective. 12 against 3. When Vasquez's second-in-command, Lieutenant Park, pulled up their tactical display, the disadvantage was just staggering. The Vorath had 12 fully armed warships boxing them in. And Kepler Station? Well, they had 3 old, clunky defense turrets. And it gets worse. They only had enough ammo for maybe 20 minutes of actual combat. As Lieutenant Park so perfectly summarized it at the time, they were facing an invincible armada with nothing but a coffee machine and a prayer.
But here's the kicker. Commander Vasquez, she didn't even blink. She didn't call for a tactical surrender. Instead, she just calmly pulled up the station schematics, took a long look at the surrounding asteroid field, noted a specific fuel depot on the eastern wing, and she smiled. Now, according to the station logs, that particular smile always made her crew incredibly nervous, because her ideas were usually either brilliantly tactical, absolutely insane, or, a chaotic mix of both. She literally just cracked her knuckles and said, "All right, people, here's what we're going to do." All right, Section 3, the unorthodox defense, embracing chaos. See, the humans realized they couldn't beat the Vorath at their own game. So, they threw the rulebook completely out the window. Step 1. Team 1 intentionally lured the elite Vorath boarding party deep into the maintenance tunnels. This wasn't a standard battlefield. It was a crazy maze of pipes and zero-gravity shafts that these human engineers had spent 3 years memorizing. Step 2. Team 2 grabbed standard mining drones, literal construction tools meant for cracking rocks, and reprogrammed them into deadly attack swarms. Step 3. Team 3 set a brutal trap by venting superheated plasma straight from the reactor cooling system right into the main docking corridor. And for the grand finale, Step 4. Vasquez took the station's one and only transport shuttle, packed it to the absolute brim with every spare fuel cell they had, and fired it off on autopilot straight at the Vorath flagship. It was this beautifully uncoordinated, yet highly systematic dismantling of an elite fighting force.
Now, I really want you to let this number sink in. 40. It completely emphasizes the sheer speed and the terrifying ingenuity of that human crew, because it took those scientists and engineers exactly 40 minutes flat to completely rewrite the code on harmless asteroid-cracking drones and turn them into a devastating, weaponized swarm. The Vorath understood perfectly orchestrated defensive formations. What they did not understand was desperate human engineers working on a deadline.
3. That's how many Vorath warships were completely wiped out in a single massive explosion. This was Commander Vasquez's personal sacrifice play.
She had flown that fuel-loaded shuttle directly at the flagship herself, only ejecting in a tiny, cramped escape pod at the very last possible second.
So, what was the result of all this absolute chaos? Well, Commander Kale was literally watching his undefeated, unstoppable fleet fall apart in real time. His elite warriors, guys who had never even known the concept of fear, were retreating from a species that had only figured out space travel 50 years ago. Kale opened the comms channel again, but his tone was completely different this time. He was just in shock, and he uttered this incredible quote. "This is not how civilized warfare is conducted."
Floating out there in her spacesuit, patched in from that tiny escape pod, Commander Vasquez delivered what has to be one of the greatest responses ever. Yeah, we're not great at civilized, but we're very good at winning. And then, in just an absolute masterpiece of a power move, she gave Call a strict 4-minute warning to pack up and leave before her repurposed mining drones finished cutting straight through his heavily armored hull.
And that leads us to Section 4, the human legacy, the aftermath.
So after getting that 4-minute warning, the mighty, undefeated Vorath fleet did the unthinkable. They turned their ships around and retreated. Later that very day, Commander Kyle filed a mandatory official report with the Galactic Council that permanently cemented humanity's reputation. His warning was clear: do not underestimate humans. He said they don't fight like soldiers, they fight like they have absolutely nothing to lose. He called us chaotic, emotional, unbelievably stubborn, and warned that humans will gladly die before surrendering something they love. Basically, his final message was, do not provoke them.
So, let's tally up that final, completely impossible scoreboard, shall we? On one side, you had a heavily armed fleet of 12 warships from an empire that had crushed 42 different civilizations. On the other side, a bunch of sleep-deprived civilian humans. Final score? Humans 1, Vorath Empire 0. So, what's the big takeaway from all this madness? Well, it's a perfect example of what humans have always been. Across every battlefield, every crisis, and every supposedly impossible moment in our history, we somehow find a way forward. And it's not because we're the strongest in the galaxy, or even the smartest. It's because of our unique brand of human resilience. It's that absolute, almost reckless refusal to simply throw in the towel and quit. Which leaves me with a final, provocative question for you to chew on today. We just saw what 312 regular engineers can pull off against an undefeated galactic empire, just by being way too stubborn to surrender. So, if survival out there doesn't actually belong to the strongest or the smartest, what impossible odds could you overcome in your own life simply by refusing to quit? Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.